Everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Natasha Rosewood, quantum healer, inspirer of intuitive intelligence, and prolific author. And tonight we are going to talk about what's missing in our world, but more in your world. And before I get going, I just want to apologize for not being available to you for the last 2 weeks. I've had a horrible cold. Some of you might still be able to hear it in my kind of throat, so if you hear me choking a little bit, you'll know why. I'll try not to, though, especially live. Most of you might be glued to the TV tonight to watch the voting, especially in Canada, so I'm not expecting a lot of attendees tonight, but hopefully Peter's just joined us, so that's great. I had a great response when I put out this question about community. A lot of people responded in. So I'm feeling this is a kind of a need for a lot of us. I know it is for me, and I'll tell you why later. Before I get going, I just want to make a couple of announcements that this weekend in Penticton, if you're in the area, I am offering psychic readings at the Penticton Wellness Fair at the Recreation Centre there on Bridge Street. So if you're in the area, please come enjoy a very much discounted reading and look at my book sales for ideas for Christmas presents as well. They're all inspiring. The other thing is I'm going to be doing a YouTube live as well. So what's coming up in the next few weeks? This Facebook Live program will also be uploaded to YouTube. So if you miss this, don't worry, you can always check it out later. The exciting news is that I've just recently 11 other really wonderful light bringers, authors, inspirers, and we've all contributed to a book called Speaking from Our Hearts. And that's going to be available on Amazon November 1 for 99 pence, 99 pence, which is about $2.50, I think, right now, or $2. So if you want inspiration and you want to read some emotional stories, you can go there and get that. That's available November 1 to number 3. So what is missing in our world? As you know, I've been doing readings for. I've known that this challenging time is coming, that we're all going to be feeling very kind of out of sorts and squirrely. I'll tell you about a vision I had way back in 1986. But for me, what's missing right now is integrity. A lot of integrity has gone out of our ordinary behavior. We're also missing our manners. I'm a Brit, so I really notice how rude people are or not. And it just seems to be that the level of thinking. I see that Gary's joined us. Hi, Gary. Come on, ask me questions. And also laughter, missing humor. Again, I'm a Brit. I grew up on comedy, so I'm really noticing how everybody's taking everything very seriously, and that's not good for our mental health. The major thing I think that's missing is our sense of belonging, and I'm going to go into some explorations of why I think that is. Obviously, there's a lot of dark stuff happening right now on the planet, and if you watch and listen and take in the 6 o'clock news, you're going to feel pretty depressed if you think that's the way of the world or the only way of the world. So what do you feel is missing your Gary? I'm going to ask you just a comment. If you could feel anything that you wanted to feel, what would it be right now? Excited, peace, safety, like you belong to something that was bigger than you, where you felt it was right that we were moving forward. Maybe it's hope. A lot of people are losing hope. What I'm finding with my clients, the main things they're complaining of are feeling overwhelmed, sometimes depression, anxiety a lot, and this separateness. So I'm going to talk about the separateness and how we can bring that back in, why it's happening, and how we can bring it back in. Personally, I want to create this community because I want people to feel that they've got somewhere they can come where they can get inspiration. They can get the truth about what's going on in the world, because the 6 o'clock news is just a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of what's really happening. In my world, I experience a lot of healing modalities, a lot of beautiful people, spirits, strong people who are powerful, who've had miraculous healings or perform miraculous healings. So there's a lot of good on the planet that goes unrealized. This place where people can come and check in, tell me their stories, inspire others, share how they're really feeling, not just saying fine, but let's talk about how we're really feeling so we can validate those feelings and help you move forward as well. So I want to bring back fun, laughter. Let's bring back giggling, innocence, and just feeling safe with one another. Let's explore, let's share our feelings, and let's build a fantastic community committed to the light and stepping into the light. But first, let's understand what's going on and why we're feeling the way we're feeling. So, like I said, I had a vision way back in 1986. And this was just before I was really starting to acknowledge my psychic ability. And it's been written in my first book, I Think I'm Psychic. And it was amazing for me because I definitely went into another dimension. I experienced beings from another dimension, and they told me the future of the planet. And just one of the things they told me is that just past the end of the decade, the end of the century, which was around 2000, and just in the early part, that we would start to experience this increase in energy and frequency, this intensity and amplification of all our thoughts and feelings. In other words, our vibrations. And it was really, really important because this was going to bring everything out of the shadows into the light. So you've probably noticed how things from the dark are coming out into the light so that they can be healed. The Me Too. And Gary, I know, has written a book about his native upbringing and how the First Nations people are finally, thank you, getting their power back after being very damaged by the treatment that they received and in the residential schools and other places, and still are to some degree. So there's a lot of exposure to the shadow side of humanity, of all parts of ourselves individually and groups and organizations. And so it looks like the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but actually it looks kind of dark and heavy. It looks like there's a big black cloud hanging over the planet. And there are days when I feel that, but we have to know that this too shall pass. This is merely a cleansing. So in this vision, what these other beings, other dimensional beings told me is that we were free to choose whether we continued going into this dark vibration and staying there, or do we want to go into this high frequency and into the light? And as we know, there have been spiritual teachers around for the last 50 years speaking of other possibilities, speaking of a lighter way of being, a more loving way of being. And many people have already chosen to go to the light. And I'm inviting those people to come into this community on Facebook to begin with, Natasha's New Reality Network. And I want to invite you just to come in so we can see how many people there are on the planet who are actually already in the light, who have an awareness, who, it's not about being perfect, it's just about setting intention to follow that path rather than stay in the old ways of being, those people who control, who want to hurt other people, who want to scam other people, who want to be in power in a negative way. So there's definitely going to be a separation of the consciousness. And on the planet Earth, this frequency is going to keep rising. So in order for us to exist on Mother Earth, we are going to have to rise up with that frequency. And that's going to not force us, but really we have to it's a law of physics, like attracts like, so we have to step into that frequency in order to be here. So I'm encouraging all of you to really live in the light and just come and join us in our new community. So in this vision, what happens, as I was told, was that once we step into the frequency and those other darker, lower frequency energies are going to actually leave the planet, may already be doing so right now. It's a bit like what's happening to humanity and Mother Earth. It reminds me of an addictive person who's really not, who's abusing their body and abusing their life. And I know this because I lived with an alcoholic mother, and often this dynamic has to get worse before it can get better. So we're in the throes of that. There's still, as we know, a lot of denial going on about really what's happening on the planet. People are still shutting their eyes and digging their heads in the sands. And so this will too shall pass. So the more people that are in the light, they can help tip the balance of getting us to move forward and being more healthy to the planet, to ourselves, and as a human race. So save ourselves, really. Mother Earth will always survive, but so we can save ourselves and really respect her as an entity and respect ourselves as entities as well. So I can understand why some of the people think that it is the end of the world. If you listen to the news again, they'd certainly like you to believe that. They really want to put the fear into you. And I feel that this is a kind of tactic to divide and conquer. There's a lot of fear around. And you know that when you feel fear, you kind of go down inside yourself. And maybe you're not as outgoing and you don't share as much and you don't trust your intuition. And maybe you don't want to go outside. There are a lot of different versions of fear. And this current environment that we're living in seems to be encouraging fear. And what I'm asking you to do is really recognize that and go, haha, I know what you're doing, but I choose love instead. So it's either or. You either buy into it or you don't, and you choose for yourself, and that's what's being empowered. So there's a kind of an Armageddon going on right now because it's very easy, and I have some days where I struggle with this myself, where I'm feeling fear and I'm letting, sometimes my clients come to me, and one day I read 7 clients and 4 of those clients had lost people to suicide. That's a pretty high statistic. So I have to keep myself really believing and staying in the positive light so I can empower my clients to do the same thing. And having a community would really be lovely because we can all support one another. So to me, what's going on right now, it's kind of a breakdown and breakthrough. And like I said, it's like that addictive personality that is just fighting and fighting and fighting it and still, not treating themselves with respect. And then suddenly one tired of being sick and tired, and I'm going to change this. And there's kind of a decision that's made, and the improvement starts, and the growth and the healing and the recovery begins. So I think planet Earth and we as a human race are going through that quite a bit. And what the reason I want to have this community, another reason is I'm very curious about how many people on the planet are in the light. And I think it was Wayne Dyer that said, we don't need 50% of the consciousness on the planet, or 50% the light, to create a tipping point here. I think we only need about a quarter of the planet to really be in the light, because as we know, light is much more powerful than dark. What happens when you walk into a dark room and you switch on a light, the dark is gone. So I want us all to turn on our light as bright as possible and just really eradicate this darkness that's going on. The sooner we do that, the sooner we can move through these times and really come into a very long period of what is Earth. Wouldn't that be something? So you can do your bit just by thinking positive and loving thoughts and being kind as well. So I think what we need to do is acknowledge what is creating this anxiety and this feeling of overwhelm. And I want to say separateness. And there are four things that I could think of, and maybe you can think of more. But one is obviously the media, mainstream media. And, you know, wherever you say there's fake news, but you turn on TV or Twitter, wherever, and all this negative stuff is coming back. We're not hearing a lot of all the good that's going on the planet. There's definitely not a balance between that. So we have to be very careful about what we choose to believe. I like to stay in the know of what's going on the planet, but at the same time, I'm always filtering and monitoring and saying, well, that's not the whole picture, that's not the whole picture, and looking elsewhere for the other truths that are going on. The other thing that isn't happening is they're talking about so many things that, and instilling fear, I think, in young people about the state of the earth, and they're not mentioning all the new technologies that actually could be available in a heartbeat if those new technologies were allowed to come forward. So it's a bit like the comparison between holistic doctors versus the medical system. The holistic practitioners have been put down and are still being put down for a long time. And so by the medical community, because they consider themselves to be the authority, and they might be threatened by holistic practitioners, I'm not sure, but it's a bit like that. So when there's a dire need, or when people are educated enough to know that there are other technologies that can create water, that can recycle plastic, that can really save the planet in so many ways, I believe those technologies will come forth just out of sheer necessity and human survival. But if we knew that they were there, I think that would give a lot of young people a lot of hope, because at the moment their future looks pretty dire according to the news. So let's see if we can broadcast those as well. There is so much information coming at us, but it's all very confusing. It's coming to us in different ways with different stories. Stories aren't finished off. I believe that all this information that comes to us through technology, through social media, however we get that, is kind of fragmenting us. I know as an intuitive, I'm in intuitive mode, and then I go on my email, my Facebook, and my Twitter, and my Instagram. Is like, whoa, and it's very fragmenting. And that fragmenting, if you think about it, is separating us as well. And it makes us, I think, wonder about our own intuition. What is true? What isn't true? Who can we trust? Who can't we trust? And in these interesting times, and I'm going to be talking about this in my new book, um, I'm going to be talking about the importance of really knowing your intuition and being able to trust it. So you don't have to go and see a psychic. You don't have to come see me. You can just check in with yourself and really know it. And, you know, your intuition might be the only true friend you have at some point or at some moments in your life. So it's very important that we really empower ourselves to really listen to that guidance and that inner voice. The next thing is, and this sounds weird, but there are no more newspapers, sadly, or very few. And in the old days, we all used to read in the same area, the same newspaper, and we all kind of got the same story. But now we're also getting our news from so many different sources. And one Scottish girlfriend said to me, "Oh, Natasha, haven't you heard about that? It's all over the news." And I went, "Well, I watch the news. Which news are you watching?" So we're all in our own little worlds a little bit with different bits of news. And do we know that that news is real or fake? And is it followed up on? Very rarely. And so that's another thing that's kind of separating us. And we don't know, it's kind of taking the edge off our confidence a little bit, because can we trust what we're hearing and what we're following up on? The third thing is that really, I think, is causing us to challenge our community is, and creating this separateness again, is technology. And God bless technology, because it's allowed me to do so many things, and I'm not against it, absolutely not. But it does kind of divide and conquer. So a lot of us now are not working in offices. We're working out of home. We don't have that social aspect of commuting on the train or the bus or driving in the car and meeting by the coffee machine or the water cooler to talk over what we saw on TV last night or our relationships. So we're missing, I think, a huge social aspect. And that's making us feel more alone. Some of us may love it, being able to work from home and be with our kids, but at the same time, you're on your own and you're not having the same interaction. And I think this is actually causing some kind of, I want to say, suicide of society. There's a lot of separation and isolation now because of technology. And again, this news thing, we don't know what's going on and who do we talk to about that. And it kind of makes us feel like we're living on a little bit of an island. And unless we get that validated, unless we get that story or that feeling validated, we're going to feel more and more alone. Businesses now don't even bother having an office building. They will go and arrange their meetings in hotels or restaurants. So again, there isn't this kind of collective of people coming together, working for the same goal, the same company. And even though you're on your own, you may be still working for that organization. You don't have that same kind of camaraderie that you did before. And people, apparently, we really need to be in the same physical space. There's something visceral that happens, even if we're in a doctor's waiting room and we don't know anybody in the room. There's something about seeing other human beings. And I think it's because we mirror one another. We learn from one another all the time when we're in a communal space. So the fourth thing is this distrust and fear, which, as you know, some of it has come from terrorism, and I think terrorism has come from people feeling isolated, marginalized, as they say. And again, distrust and fear, if we don't trust what we see, what we hear, what we read, how do we cope with that? And then these fearful things happen out in the world. We're going to go run right to that fearful place and go, oh, I'm not going to go to the theater or shopping mall or get on a. And I've heard people say this. So it's like we're kind of pulling back again into our little homes where we're nestling behind our computer screens and we're alone. We're not sharing our experiences in the real world. And so that if we create a society where everybody is isolated and vulnerable, to me, it makes us vulnerable to, I want to say, another power that can come in and just really have more control of us. So we need to go the other way. In order to empower ourselves, we need to get out there. We need to share in a very real way. I'm starting a Facebook community page so that you can come. And again, I'm using technology, but this is just to get the ball rolling. This is just to give you a place where we can at least check in with each other. And you don't have to do anything. Just want to see your name up there and say, hey, Natasha, count me in. I want to be part of this community where we do speak the truth and we are sharing our inspirational stories and wonderful things are happening in the world. And guess what? I spontaneously healed from blah, blah, blah last night, or I met my soulmate, or I found a cure for dengue fever or something. There's lots of great stuff happening and we need to share that. So why I want a community, like I said, I want to know how many light bearers there are on the planet. And when I say light bearer, I don't mean you have to be a teacher or a writer or healer in any way. You just have to be somebody that's chosen to go with the light, who wants to move forward, that wants to open up, explore, learn more, grow, heal, do work on yourself. And there are people who are on this live right now who I know have done a lot of work and they've woken up to themselves and now they're doing awesome stuff on the planet. And I congratulate you all. I want to feel like I have a family of friends and my clients and the people I respect and admire can all come together in one place. And maybe we're all posting to one another, but it's all inspirational, it's all loving, it's all kind, and it's all about hope and knowing that there's a beautiful segment of humanity on the planet that really wants peace, that really wants to live intelligently. No scams, no cons. That is such a waste of energy and such bad karma for anybody who's doing it. I don't envy you, your karma. So it's about being in the light, being healthy, mentally healthy, having fun, supporting one another, and what a beautiful world that would be. And then to know that we can belong, I think belonging is also another human need. We need to feel like we're part of something, that we have some kind of family, even if it's not blood family. My clients are my family. I love my clients, and I want to bring my clients all together again. So I say, okay, I'll put something on Facebook, and if you're interested, you can come and join in. I want to stay in touch with you. I want to know how you're doing after we've done a reading or a quantum healing or a past life regression, or I've ghostbusted your house. Let's share the stories. Let's have fun with this, and let's keep moving forward. And really to show the world that there is so much more power in light than there is in dark. And that I sense from my psychic vision that there's a whole army of light workers just sitting below the surface, kind of under the radar right now. But if we're to put out these communities and make it possible and safe and wonderful for people to step forward, we're going to find out just how many beautiful kindred spirits there are on the planet. And so from that place, we can change it. So I'm going to call my community page Natasha's New Reality Network. It's going to be private to begin with. So if you'd like to just have your name on it or share anything, just send me a Facebook message request. You're in there. So thank you so much for listening. And Gary and Peter, thank you for being with me. And I'm sorry it took so much effort for you, Gary, to find this. But I normally do it every Monday, for those of you who don't know, but the last 2 weeks I wasn't able to do it just for this scratchy throat. But it's feeling better now. Thank you, universe. And I'll see you next week. Namaste. Love, light, and laughter to all.